Welcome to Insight, a series exploring the deeper philosophies of renowned traditional martial artists, hosted by Ray Hughes, a martial artist with 50 years of experience.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show where I dive into the minds of unsuspecting guests to find their deepest, darkest secret to use against them for financial gain. It's an American thing. People that are watching the show from outside the country, you probably don't understand it, but in America, that's what we do here for fun. So, Scott, you probably didn't realize what you're getting yourself into.
Oh yeah, this was a total surprise. Wait a minute, I've never experienced your sense of humor before. Okay, we're good.
Well, let me introduce Scott Harrow. First of all, full disclosure, Scott Harrow is a very, very good friend of mine. I've known him for 20, 30 years. He'll probably touch base on when he started. He is that 1 to 2 or 3% of the student base that does all the work in the school. So that should give you a little bit of insight to his character. Very good man. I wanted to start with him because I want to touch base on people who start martial arts as an adult versus starting as a child or a kid or something like that. Scott is the senior instructor at both schools that we have here in Arizona, the Scottsdale and Chandler Martial Arts Centers. He is also the director for both schools for the Kobudo program or weapons program. He is the technical advisor along with Kelly Hatta for our WIKF organization. They bring in the technical knowledge from international to our schools. And he is also a USA karate official, breaking the hearts of small children, which I really appreciate and respect. So with that, Scott, tell us a little bit why did you even start training in the martial arts?
Well, I started March 1st, 2001, but I was inspired by my children who were both in the program as little kids. I think Rachel started at maybe 4 or 5 years old, and Becca started at probably maybe about 6 or 7. The younger one started later. And that's when, and why is like saying, well, I was looking for something else to do besides go to the gym. That was honestly the impetus of it. I need to do something, and the gym wasn't always for me. So I said, well, this looks like a challenge. This looks like fun, as odd as this is for the definition of fun. And that's how it started.
Did you expect to stay in it this long when you first started, or did you think when you started you'd just be in it for a brief amount of time and get out?
This is one of those things where you jump into something without really trying to predict the future. At least for me, and when you try to do that, I usually get surprised at what happens. So the answer is no, I didn't even think about it. And I didn't even know I was going to stay until I was well into Greenbelt.
Let me ask you about starting training as an adult. Now that you've been training for 25, 30 years, looking back, are there pros and cons of starting as an adult versus a kid?
Okay, the con is obvious. You're not that flexible or nimble or conditioned when you start as an adult. In fact,
Other than that,
other than that, it's perfectly natural. Yeah, it's perfectly the same. The advantage you have as an adult is that you are an adult. Your attention span is larger than a goldfish, and you have the ability to absorb and process the information when someone tells you something. You may not be able to do it physically, but at least you can understand it right away and try to do it. That is I think
yeah.
a big advantage between adults starting and children starting.
It was funny because teaching, and we'll get into teaching a little later in the show, but it's amazing the different technique that you use in teaching an adult versus a child. For me, it seems like adults have no problem doing the same technique for the whole class, trying to perfect it, where kids are bored within 2 minutes and think they've already mastered it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. You have to read your class. If they start to glaze over, whether children or adults, you have to do something else.
Yeah.
Especially with little children, I've noticed it's more important to play with them rather than teach them. You're doing karate activities, but it's more like active playtime as opposed to hard structure that you'd give an adult.
No, yeah, it's different. And we'll touch base about that. Now, you competed also.
Mm-hmm.
How long did you compete, and at what rank and
I
time was
started as
that?
orange belt, and I think I concluded as black belt. That's when I realized that you
Did
were in my
you?
division.
That's I remember becoming a brand new black belt back in my day and having a fight with guys that were black belts longer than I had been trained. So I get that.
Yeah.
What is your perspective on competition? And the reason why I ask that is there's a lot of people that I know that a lot of them are my seniors, some of them are not, that really I don't want to say despise competition, but they do not see any value and they think it cheapens the art. Where do you fall on that?
Well, there's competition as if you're trying to become an elite athlete, like for the Olympics or something like that. That's that aside, is competing for competing's sake has a lot of value. For one thing, there's you get over that tunnel vision nervousness, especially during kumite matches. Your first one is terrifying, and subsequent ones get a lot better, and you learn to deal with that kind of stress in real time. Belt tests give you kind of that kind of stress, but not as much. It's the tournament does give you that incredible. I can't see in front of my face, and I know my eyes are open. Kind of stress result.
Well, a lot of people that I talk to say that competition does not benefit self-defense. Your thoughts on that?
Disagree. You're not going to use deadly techniques in a tournament, obviously, but you get to learn to deal with the stress. And when you're in a self-defense situation, it's another level above stress-wise to a tournament, but you still learn to have. It's better than starting cold with no stress, and not
Well,
understanding that stress.
I remember because I did get in a few fights back in my early days. And back in the 70s, I guess that was acceptable. I don't know. But we're in our 20s and probably even in our 30s. And I remember those self-defense situations clearly. Stress, vision drops, very, very difficult to manage. And the only thing that I see in our martial arts training that deals with that is competition. Belt promotions to a degree, but like you said, it's not as high as competition. And the longer that you train, the belt tests are not as stressful as the beginning. But competition is that way pretty much to the end.
Yes, it's always like that. You always get nerves, and sometimes your nerves are different depending on the crowd that you're with. Because, you say, well, these competitors are very good and and I'm a small guy and they're very big. So it's like, I got to deal with that, especially for travel size.
Well, just before we move on, the thought I have with competition, it's a great tool, but that's really all it is. I think it's a problem if your school becomes a competition school.
I've seen competition fever happen where that becomes the end all be all, and you forget about the martial art. You focus more on the sport than you do the martial art.
Yeah. Now, the art is important. The one thing that I've saw with competition, I know we're staying on this a little longer than I planned, but it's a good topic, is competition allows you to teach the student how to deal with injustice of life because karate terms are subjective and there's human error and there is bias, which are elements of the human condition in life. And I love being able to teach those philosophies while people are going through the competition. If not, all you'd have is a crazy person screaming that they're lost because of the referee.
Well, it kind of just reflects normal life. There's mistakes made, errors in judgment, or differences in judgment. I've stood there at the line going, that punch shouldn't have scored, and they gave me a score. Or, wow, that shouldn't have scored on me, and they gave it to him. And it's like, yeah. So it happens both ways. Mistakes happens, judgment happens. It's like, well, that's the way it is. And you just have to accept that and move on. And that's actually a good thing to learn as a child or an adult.
And I'm so with you on it. We could have a whole show just on this topic alone. But moving on, you became an instructor. About what time in your career did you start teaching?
Well, I was recruited to teach by my sensei. When I was a green belt, I was instructed to take a new student aside and teach them just basics. And that's maybe the start.
Yeah, I remember you doing that and totally destroyed that person, and they ended up quitting and needed therapy. So that wasn't a very good start.
I consider that a win.
My philosophy is you can only get so high if you only are a student. To go higher in understanding the martial arts, you need to teach. Where's your thoughts on that?
Oh, there's lots of thoughts on that. Teaching is training, just plain and simple. Because as you're teaching someone, you're breaking it down for them, or at least you're supposed to break it down for them. And in time, you get a better understanding and a deeper understanding of what your technique is, as opposed to just teaching them the basics. And that's actually quite valuable. Not only that, it's part of the chain of passing it on from generation to generation. You want to say, well, someone passed it on to me. I feel like I want to pass it on to somebody else and give them that gift. When gave me a gift, I want to give them a gift.
In addition to that, too, you have to think about, you really don't know or understand the technique until you have to explain it to somebody, especially with the variety of skill levels that you're introduced to as an instructor.
Oh, that's indeed correct. And that's why you have to have the ability to break it down appropriately, right?
Yeah.
You can,
Well, that's,
you know,
go ahead.
so you see a student and they say, "Oh, wow, they've got some skills. I don't need to do this single step at a time. I think I can move on." Or I ask them, "Do you have any previous martial arts experience?" And they tell me about it. That also helps you get started as a one-on-one teacher. But there's other students that come in going, "Have you ever done martial arts before?" "No." "Do you do a sport?" "No." "Why are you here?" "I'm interested, or my parents are making me." Well, let's start from the beginning, step by step.
You know, one of the benefits of starting martial arts as an adult helps you be an effective teacher with the new adult student. Would you agree?
Yes. And being an older adult, it actually helps me understand teaching other older adults with limitations.
Yeah,
It's like saying,
absolutely.
you have to train smart. Don't look like that 21-year-old next to you.
Well, that's what's hard when you have a 21-year-old athlete that's been trained for 10, 15 years, trying to teach that 60-year-old, 50-year-old adult.
Next thing you know,
Generally, not that well.
the medics are coming and treating a shattered pelvis. I mean, that's the way it sometimes works out.
Well, at what point did you start officiating?
Let's see.
How old?
I know I did some officiating informally, starting maybe 2008 or 9, but
Yeah,
formally was 2012 with USA Karate.
right. Are there pros or cons of being an official?
Well, it's another one of those things where you're saying, what did I get into? And you're going, well, okay, it seems straightforward, but no, there's a lot of rules. There's a lot of mannerisms and etiquette you need to follow. And then you're going, wow, this is difficult. And you just have to, that's kind of the rough answer. I think I need that question again.
Well, here's the thing too, and learning to deal with the fact half the people hate you on any given call. That's always a new experience. But you know, one thing that I got out of competition being an official, and I never saw it coming, is that it helped me become a better teacher. After watching, I officiated from beginning of time since I've been in the martial arts. But I got involved with USA Karate about 2010, 2009, somewhere in there. And as I started going through the official levels and then starting to watch and judge elite level kata people, and then as you're judging them over the years, you're starting to watch them and you're seeing certain mechanics, regardless of style, certain mechanical movements, the way they breathe, the attack. And I would think about it and say, I need to address that more in detail in my school. And it really affected
Mm-hmm.
my teaching in a positive way on, kata development and basic development.
So, absolutely. There is stuff you always learn as an official taking away, whether you're learning to teach your students the rules or the etiquette of a tournament, up to and saying, wow, that's an interesting technique, fighting technique, or we need to learn how to defend against that fighting technique because we're getting clobbered. So, stuff that you can always bring back to your dojo because of that.
You have to be a humble person to do that. I know many people that are just so arrogant that they think they know everything. Actually, it'll be a person we'll be talking about here in a second. As we start to wind down our little interview, as you reflect back over your martial art career, I'm sure that you've had some highs and some lows. If you got any highs and lows you'd like to discuss?
So clearly a high is, I would say after any belt test, whether you passed or not, it's like saying, wow, I feel good about doing that. I came out the other side and I'm a little tired, maybe a little bruised, maybe a little exhausted in case of dawn testing, but I feel good about it. It's quite a high. It's very satisfying to finish a test. And you, at some point you say, well, I don't care whether I passed or not. I finished the test. Lows, okay, there we go. The first low I hit, believe it or not, I was an orange belt. I was training about 9 months and I didn't feel like I was doing it. I didn't feel like I was progressing. Class after class, I've just felt like I was 2 left feet and 2 right hands. It was just stumbling through. And plus the mats were soft back then and I rolled the toe a lot. But it was just like, I'm not getting anywhere. I'm not getting anywhere. That low was overcome by just simply showing up for another day and just dealing with it. Lows happen after tournaments. He's saying, I think I did really well and I didn't place or score. But that's the way it is. That's another low you got to deal with. And then there's always difficulty as an adult, at least for me, memorizing stuff.
Yeah, that's getting even worse. I'm getting older.
What's getting even
I
worse?
can't remember.
Remember
My
what?
memory and exactly. What are we talking about? Where are we? We had talked off air before we started the show about disappointments, and we both had the same disappointment when we had a senior instructor that actually was a senior instructor to me. And then we had brought him into the school to handle the weapons program, run the weapons program and also the competition team. And then to find out that he was recruiting, I don't know if that's the way you word it, recruiting money from students for ventures, which in hindsight looks like it was a Ponzi scheme. You remember that?
I do remember that.
Were you shocked about that experience?
Quite, yes, because this was a very senior person. I've been training a long time, more than you and more than most other
Yeah.
people I know. And
Yeah.
he had a lot of knowledge in him. He seemed like he was following the karateka rules of etiquette and a Budo code. But at the end of the day, he violated all that. And that was quite disappointing because he was a scammer. And
Yeah.
that was incredibly disappointing.
Very, very bad.
There's not much you can say about that except for that it probably happens elsewhere. And if others are listening to this cast, they should be aware of that. There's something to learn from it. And what to learn from it is that not everybody are who has they seen, right? And how do you look for that disingenuity? And the answer is you see a pattern over time and you have to just be aware. Just like Zanshin, you just need to be aware.
You know what's so tough about that? Now, the reason why I wanted to bring it up, I don't want to talk about negative things on a show all the time, but my assumption is if you've been in the arts any length of time, you probably have come across difficult situations that makes you question whether you are in the right place, want to quit, move on. And I wanted to bring that up because just like you say, you have to have your eyes wide open. I know one of the big mistakes I made when I first got into martial arts is I put a couple people on pedestals. When I started, I was 19. I read all the books. I mean, I got about 1,000 martial art books here on the walls. I read all of them. You get thinking that some of these people are idols. And then when you find out they're just human beings, it can hurt. And I remember being told, never put somebody on a pedestal, but it's hard to do when you're brand new and new at the beginning.
Well, so maybe that's an advantage as starting as an adult because
Yeah.
you've learned not to put people on pedestals, most likely due to your experiences from your career. And
Yeah. And I don't know if this is true or not, but back in the 70s when I started, I think there were more evil people at those time and, instructors and stuff from different schools. I don't know if that's not the case and everybody's still the same, but it seemed like it was bad back in those days.
Well, sometimes likes attract likes. And when you have a cluster of those type of people, they tend to gather. So it statistically, it may be deceiving of how much of the population really is like that.
Yeah, you are who you hang with. Funny, I learned that from my parents. I didn't believe they knew what they were
You
talking
were right about
so.
something?
Well, an adult, when I figured out my parents actually knew something about life. I wish I'd listened to them a little bit more.
I know I should have moved out when I was
you.
15 because I knew everything by then.
I don't know if you remember, but we had a car commercial back in the 60s, maybe even 70s and 80s. And this guy was a really soft-spoken owner of this auto dealership. And he talked about his dad and how when he was a kid and how his dad was the most greatest person in the whole entire world. And then as he became older and a teenager, his dad didn't know as much as he thought he did. And by 20, he didn't know anything. And then by 30, his dad was pretty smart again. By 40, he was the smartest guy in the world. I believe that totally.
Yes. I don't remember the commercial, but yes.
Well, I want to wrap up the show. Thank you coming on. I want to have you come back if you can in a future show because there's a couple other areas that I'd like to get into. We don't have time today.
Anytime.
Because it's an honor. I'm so proud for you to be the first person on my show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
me. And you're helping me through the technical side of this show. As I started this podcast, I'm a complete white belt at everything, hardware, software, presentation. So I'm learning as I go and you're really helping me a lot on that area. So I'm about a green belt now, I think, in podcasting. I'm hoping to get better. I
think you're overranked in podcasting, but that's just my opinion.
Probably. Yeah, we'll talk about that the next time we train. The next show, everybody, will be with Kelly Hutta. Kelly Hutta is another person I've known and I consider a really good friend. She owns her own school. She's homeschools 4 children. She owns her own fitness business. I think she's a Renaissance woman. So she will be coming on the show. It'll be coming out pretty quick. And the angle of that show is to see and hear about the female perspective of owning dojos, competition, officiating, so on and so forth. So with that, I hope you tune in to the next show. And with that, so long. We'll take care, and we'll talk with you soon.